When it comes to getting help, this is what this course is all about. Now that you know how to ask for what you need from your target audience, it's now time to get help from the rest of your team, your board members, your volunteers, staff, to spread that message far and wide to the right people. Because you can't do it alone. You have to work with your team. Each of these groups, whether it's volunteers, board members, staff, they play a critical role in your fundraising strategy. But the key to success is that understanding that each group needs to have a different approach. And you can even segment each of those groups even further. They have different levels of commitment, different levels of motivations, skill sets, interests, you name it. So let's start with your volunteers, the ambassadors of your community. Volunteers are the lifeblood of any nonprofit. They're not just helpers, but they are extensions of the community. The more you engage with them, the more invested the community becomes in your cause. Hey, have you heard of this? I was volunteering here. This is what I've learned. The more that they become your cheerleaders, they can be your biggest ambassadors, and they bring your mission to life through their own stories, their own experiences as they share with other people. But just like your donors that we've talked about, every volunteer has different motives for helping. Maybe they're there to support a specific group you serve, like animals, underserved communities, elderly people, and some actually just come to socialize. In fact, a Sterling volunteer survey say 35% of volunteers actually volunteer because they want to meet other volunteers and other people, or they're there to fulfill a school or work requirement. So you need to leverage each volunteer's motivation to help them craft their own story that supports your fundraising efforts. Next, moving on to board members, your strategic fundraisers. Board members play a strategic role, obviously, but every board is very different, and resource development should be a core tenet of their responsibilities. Because when it comes to getting their help, you need to make sure they're prepared and ready to support with fundraising. But it's not really that easy because maybe fundraising, or AKA sales, might not be the easiest or most natural thing people do. So how do we address it? Number one, training. Make fundraising training a part of the onboarding process with your board members. Whether it is a development staff member or yourself, coaching board members on fundraising strategies is critical. Bringing in maybe fundraising leaders or consultants to mentor and train them is another option. Another one could be digital courses or consultants, because sometimes your staff might not be the right people, or they're already stretched thin to be training your board members, and that's totally okay. By using digital courses or consultants to help your board learn without overloading your team, that's a great way too. And when it comes down to local and corporate sponsorships, encourage the board and the members there to seek local donations and those corporate sponsorship. You can even simplify the ask by going, would you be willing to have coffee or lunch with so-and-so from this company? Board members can help you build relationships with corporate partners in a more professional and personal setting. The bottom line, give your board members the tools that they need to be fundraising champions. And just like volunteers, make sure that they have a platform to practice and grow. It doesn't happen overnight. When it comes down to staff members, what they need to do is support the mission. Your staff plays a unique role in your organization. Very similar to like board members, they're required to support your mission, but they might not be directly involved in fundraising. So here's how we can improve or change that. First, start by assessing their current skill sets and knowledge of fundraising. Based on what you find, you can build a training plan to boost their confidence. This won't apply to your development team, but for others, this can be a game changer. For instance, you want to start with fundraising basics. Teach fundraising cycles, donor segments, storytelling techniques, things that we've already talked about in the previous modules. And once they understand the basics, encourage them to practice, because practice makes progress. Get your staff involved in events and fundraising initiatives, and after, give them feedback and post-event coaching to really refine their skills. And lastly, encourage them to share their experience and build upon their public speaking skills. Staff members should feel confident and engaged in supporting the organization's fundraising events, even if it's not their primary role. With practice and proper feedback, you can turn your team into fundraising allies. It'll be a lot of fun, a lot of work too, but it'll pay off. And public speaking and storytelling, what's the common thread in between? Here's the thing. Whether you are working with volunteers, board members, staff, public speaking and storytelling are the common threads that can make or break your fundraising efforts. There is a lot of detail, a lot of intentionality behind a lot of the things that we are talking about. So you want to start with the basics, simplify all these things. Whether it's body language, engagement, confidence, give each group and person the opportunity to practice with these real-world scenarios. Whether it's inviting your volunteers to share their story at an event, encouraging board members to be more active on social, it's harder for some than others, or potentially even in their personal networks as they meet people. Motivate staff to build on their public speaking skills through whether it's internal trainings and coaching sessions. By giving your audience and the groups that you have the space to practice and the tools to improve, you're not just enlisting help, but you're really empowering them to make a difference, to feel the value and impact that your organization is already doing. So let's practice what we've learned. Now that we've gone over how to enlist help, let's put it into paper. Think about the volunteers, the board members, and your staff in the organization, whether it's an org chart or just people that you have in mind. How can you engage with them in your next fundraising campaign? Who are your biggest supporters, and how can you leverage their motivations to spread the organization's story? Do they have a personal story that they can link to? What are their motivations? What training or resources do you need to provide them to get better in their storytelling or their fundraising campaigns? I want you to write down one action, just one, that you can take with each group to get them involved in your next fundraising campaign. So as we wrap up, practice makes progress. It is not about perfection. I do not believe in perfection. It is about progress. You're going to get incrementally better over time. And this module is all about turning what you've learned into action. And you and your team have come a long way from knowing your audience to crafting your story, now getting help from others. This is where you can take everything that you've learned and putting it into practice and action. Remember, you're not just asking for help. You are empowering others to be part of the mission, part of the cause. And that's how you build a strong, sustainable fundraising strategy. If you're ready to practice your skills, I'm so excited for you. We've got a lot of work ahead, but I know you can do it.